Hey you guys, it's Unit 9 and it's Segment 3. This is called Populations. We're going to learn about how populations grow. We're going to learn about limits to their growth and the human population growth. So remember, populations as a level is interbreeding individuals and species in a given area in a given time. Population, group of individuals that belong to the same species and live in the same area. There are three important characteristics that describe a population, and they are their geographic distribution. What is the area inhabited by this population? What is their density, meaning how many individuals are there? And then the growth rate, how fast is this population growing? With population density, okay, you're looking at the number of individuals per unit area. This is going to depend on what the species is and the ecosystem that is here. So you can see this penguin picture. There are a lot of individuals packed into a small amount of space versus the cactus population is pretty widespread. Population growth, you guys, there are three factors that will influence how fast the population is growing, and that is the number of births. Okay, what happens if there are more births than there are deaths? The number of deaths, what happens if there are more deaths than there are births? Okay, that would shrink the population, right? And if there's more births than deaths, that would grow the population. The number of individuals that are entering or leaving, and there are specific terms for that. Immigration is the movement of individuals into an area. Immigration into, they both start with N. And this will lead to a growth in the population number because you have more individuals coming in. Emigration is the movement of individuals out of the area. And if you've got movement out, that's going to obviously decrease the population, but you do need to know those terms. There are two growth models. One of them is exponential, the other one is logistic. If you were to allow unlimited supply of resources, okay, then a population would show exponential growth. So here is the graph, and I want you to draw this in your notes. For exponential growth, you have time going across here at the bottom, so time is moving along. Population size is going up the side, so the number of individuals. So as this arcs up, you can see that time is going by and the population size is increasing. Increasing and increasing and increasing exponentially, okay? So we know that biotic living things and abiotic non-living things will impact the growth of a population. If we allow those things to be unlimited in supply, then we would see exponential growth. It's called a J-shaped curve or a J-curve. It slowly increases, but once it starts to curve up, it's going to be a rapid increase in numbers. So under ideal conditions, unlimited resources, population is going to grow exponentially. This doesn't happen regularly in natural populations. There are restrictions. There are resources exist in limited supplies. You've got competition, predation. You've got all these pressures happening. Logistic growth is the other growth model, and this one is a little bit more realistic as it does incorporate limited resources. So it's going to show the J curve in the beginning, so this is time along the bottom, just like the other graph. This is the number of individuals up the side, so it's just like the other graph. It starts to grow exponentially, but when you have a lot of individuals, for example, if you have a lot of mice being born, what they eat, their food supply, maybe the corn or the seeds or whatever that they're eating and consuming in the barn, that's going to become limited. Well, that's going to allow some organisms to die off because that food became limited. So you can notice here on this graph that it starts to level off as far as population numbers because you do have equal amount of death as birth, and that's what's going to give you that straight leveled off line. So we call this an S-shaped curve. The other one was a J-shaped curve. This leveling off, or what we've labeled as K, the letter K, I don't know originally why they chose K and not C, but K represents the carrying capacity for that population. How big the population can possibly get given the resources that they have. So this is the largest number of individuals in a population given the environment that can support it. And it is directly related to the limiting factors that we're going to cover in a minute. Limiting factors. So these are, now look at the word limiting. We know when you see that word limiting, you're going to be limiting something. You're going to be restricting something. So these are environmental conditions which control population size. Okay? So it can allow growth or it can allow decrease. There are two types of limiting factors that we will cover in class. We'll practice with these. They're called density dependent and density independent. Now we talked about what population density is. We just did. What was it? Population density, just that word density. It's how many individuals are in a certain amount of space. So if we're talking about limiting factors that are density dependent, that means these are factors that depend on the density of the population. That means that if a population is really high in number, the density dependent are going to kick in. Those are going to restrict. But the density independent means that it's independent of density. It does not matter if density is involved at all. It doesn't matter the number of organisms and the amount of space that they have. So these are factors that are completely independent of that. Limiting factors can be food, can be shelter, can be mates, water, availability, weather conditions, storms, and things like that. So limiting factors. They're going to limit the growth of the population. The first one we're going to talk about is density dependent. This is a factor that depends on population size. So when a population becomes too big, okay, then these are going to kick in. And this would be competition. If you've got plenty of water, there's not going to be competition for the water. Once you start limiting the amount of water that's available, now we're going to kick into competition. What about food source? Competition. What about predators coming in? They're going to consume, if the population gets in high number, there's going to be predators coming in to lower that growth. Parasitism the same way. Diseases are spread easy if there's a lot of individuals that are in the population and they're close contact with each other. Disease can spread really quickly. So those are density dependent. They only kick in when the population becomes too high. Density independent, you guys, are independent of the population size. These are limiting factors that are going to kick in regardless if there's 2 rabbits in the forest or if there's 25 rabbits in the forest. It doesn't matter. These are factors that are just going to happen. So these are limiting factors that impact all population regardless of the size. And it can be weather phenomenon, big storm blows through, tornado, natural disaster, earthquakes, volcanic eruption. I mean, these are going to wipe out organism regardless if there's 1 or if there's 10 or 100. Seasonal cycles with snow and whatever, human activities, forest fires or anything that we might do, clear cutting land, spreading insecticide, whatever. That doesn't matter if there's 1 or 100. So, but what happens is a big crash takes place with these density independent limiting factors. And that's it. That's all there is.